Well, for more on how public transport changes commuting habits between cities, I'm joined by Professor Yan Song, live from North Carolina. She's the director of the program on Chinese cities with the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rachelle, for having me.
Thank you. Now, let's try and understand just how common is intercity commuting in China?
It becomes more and more common of intercity commuting in China, and I think mostly because of the following factors. The first one is the general belief that bigger cities can have a higher level of productivity and generate more innovative activities. Thus, the national government of China has been having this plan for building more than 11 urban clusters, or what we call the cluster of cities. And the cities, I mean, the most familiar ones that you can think of is the Beijing, Tianjin, and the Hebei province region, which includes a list of 28 cities, I think. And it is quite common for people to live in one city and work in another city. For example, live in Tianjin, but commute to Beijing to work. And the second factor here is the availability of high-speed rail connecting those cities in the urban clusters.
Right.
Right.
So when people are trying to decide whether or not they want to live in a different city, how big of a factor is the commuting aspect?
Commuting time is, of course, a concern or big factor. The general norm, I think, internationally is that people wouldn't be willing to commute more than 1 hour one way to work. However, in China, I think some people are willing to travel even like 2 hours for one way to commute to work. But other factors, I think the discrepancy of urban services is another factor determining whether people want to live in a different city or not. For example, Beijing has the highest level of amenities such as arts, museums, and medical services. And for that reason, people might not be willing to live in a different city.
So when do you think this will perhaps become more widespread?
It won't be too long, I think. For one reason, China has been, as I just mentioned, promoting these urban clusters rigorously. And another factor is more and more high-speed rail has been built over the years. The data shows that there's more than 12,500 miles of high-speed rail being built in China. And this is astonishing rate of sort of increase of high-speed rail over the years. It's longer than the rest of the world combined. And there's another 10,000 miles of high-speed rail being added by 2025. So this is definitely the supply of high-speed rail accommodating the needs for intercity commuting. And another factor here is that high-income people might be willing to do intercity commuting as well in not too far of the future, because they probably prefer the amenities in the smaller cities surrounding area just because of cleaner air and green trees and other natural amenities.
Now, we're also seeing the same phenomenon in a lot of expensive cities. For instance, people who want to perhaps work in London, but it's just too expensive. So then what can China learn from how the US and other European countries are handling this?
I think there are many things that can be learned, but integration, I think it's the most important things that China can learn from European countries. By integration, I mean the integration of sort of across municipality, intercommuting, so that people can have, for example, interconnected bus lines and sort of transit routes across the municipalities. And another integration is the cross-travel modes integration, so that, for example, the bike, the subway, the bus, and the intercity transit lines can be all integrated so that people can freely and move sort of seamlessly across the modes and localities.
Now, as more people perhaps take on some of this intercity commuting, what do you see as perhaps some potential challenges?
The challenges of intercity commuting here, I think one is, of course, the fare, the ticket fare. although it's been decreasing over the time, but when you think people are doing this every day, right, it's definitely a sort of a budget concern in the long run. So the fare and the time is sort of time spent on road, and the service quality are all the challenges to promote the intercity commuting.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, Professor Yan Song, Director of the Program on Chinese Cities with the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.